My family dumped my grandmother in the cheapest nursing home they could find because they wanted her house to themselves. What they didn't know was that she had already rewritten the will. But I didn't learn that part until much later. Back then, all I felt was the cold shock of watching the woman who raised me be treated like an inconvenience instead of a human being. I grew up in her yellow house on Maple Street, the one with the creaking porch steps and the lilac bushes she trimmed every spring. That house wasn't an asset to me. It was home. It smelled like cinnamon rolls and warm blankets, and it was where I learned how to read, how to tie my shoes, and how to feel safe. My grandmother, Margaret, had the kind of warmth that didn't need to be earned. She gave it freely, even to the people who didn't deserve it. People like my father, or my uncles, or my older sister, who treated Grandma more like a stepping stone than a person. The first time I heard them talk about Grandma's house like it was already theirs, I was standing in the hallway pretending to look for my keys. I heard my uncle say, "If we sell it at the peak, we can split at least 3 ways. Maybe 4 if we're being fair." My father replied, "We'll figure that out later. For now, we keep her comfortable and keep the expenses low. A cheap place will do." A cheap place. That was how they described her final years. I should have said something. I should have shouted. But I felt outnumbered, and I was so stunned that I couldn't find my voice before the moment passed. Grandma's health started slipping faster than anyone expected. She wasn't dying, but she had trouble walking, and her memory sometimes drifted. A doctor recommended a reputable care facility outside the city, clean and well-staffed, the kind of place where people actually had the chance to live instead of just exist. But my father didn't even let the doctor finish the sentence before asking the cost. When he saw the number, he laughed. "We can't drain the estate on luxury care." The estate. That was the only thing they cared about. They found a cheaper place 20 minutes away, a building that looked like a forgotten motel from the 70s. Dim hallways, flickering ceiling lights, a smell that never quite left your clothes. The kind of place where the staff was spread too thin to notice much, and where residents spent more time staring at walls than seeing the sun. I was the only one who visited the place before they signed the paperwork. I walked through the halls with a knot in my stomach, feeling guilt I didn't even know how to name. I told my father this wasn't right, that Grandma deserved better. He didn't even look up from his phone. "She won't know the difference, and we don't have money to waste." My uncles nodded. My sister shrugged, and just like that, the decision was made. Grandma cried softly when they wheeled her in on the first day. She tried to hide it, wiping her cheek as if I wouldn't notice. I held her hand and promised I would visit every other day. She squeezed my fingers like she was holding on to the last piece of familiar ground. I kept that promise. When I walked in with homemade soup, clean blankets, and books she liked, her face would brighten for a moment, and that alone kept me going. I brushed her hair, I talked to her about my work, I sat beside her until she fell asleep. The staff came to know me by name. The other residents sometimes mistook me for their granddaughter because I was the only young person who ever came more than once. My father and uncles visited maybe twice a month, and only when they needed a picture for social media. "Visiting Mom today," they'd post, with smiles that never reached their eyes. Grandma noticed. Of course she noticed. One afternoon, when the light through the window fell warm across her bed, she reached under her pillow and pulled out a worn recipe book. The cover was frayed, the pages softened by decades of flour and fingerprints. "I want you to have this," she said. I opened my mouth to protest, but she touched my cheek gently. "And when the time comes, be there. Promise me." "I promise," I whispered. She nodded, closed her eyes, and exhaled as if something inside her had finally settled. I had no idea that recipe book was the key to everything she had done. And I had no idea the storm waiting for us after she was gone. I didn't open the recipe book until the night she died. And what I found tucked between the pages changed everything. I didn't open the recipe book until the night she died. And what I found tucked between the pages changed everything. Grandma passed away quietly just after sunset. I had been sitting beside her bed, reading one of her favorite old novels out loud, when her breathing softened, slowed, and then simply stopped. There was no dramatic moment, no final gasp, just a peaceful settling, as if she'd finally allowed herself to rest. My father arrived an hour later, acting devastated for the staff, shaking hands, thanking nurses he had hardly spoken to. My uncles followed, rehearsing lines of grief like they were preparing for a performance. My sister cried loudly and dramatically, but not once did I see her touch Grandma's hand. They didn't notice me slipping out early. They didn't care where I went. They were already talking about logistics, insurance papers, keys to the house, next steps. I drove straight home, sat on my bed, and stared at the recipe book she'd given me. My hands shook as I opened the worn cover. Between 2 pages, her gingerbread recipe and a scribbled note about adding more cinnamon, was an envelope with my name in her handwriting. Inside was a short letter. My sweet girl, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for still seeing me even when others stopped. When the time comes, you will understand everything. Go to my lawyer. Do not let anyone talk you out of it. All my love, Grandma. My breath caught. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. The next morning, while my family was arguing in our group chat about funeral arrangements, flowers, and whether the obituary should mention Grandma's strong family support, I drove to her lawyer's office. He greeted me with a kind, almost relieved expression. I was expecting you, he said. She told me you would come. He asked me to sit, then handed me a folder with my name on it. She updated her will 6 months ago. She was very clear about her intentions. I didn't open it then. I couldn't. Not until after the funeral. A week later, my family treated her funeral like a networking event. My father gave a speech about how much he sacrificed for her care. My uncles nodded solemnly. My sister posted a filtered black-and-white selfie in front of the casket with a dramatic caption about cherishing every moment. I stood near the corner, nauseous from how easily they rewrote the truth. After the burial, people offered hugs and condolences. But the moment the last guest left, my father clapped his hands together. All right, now let's get this business taken care of, he said, as if we were discussing weekend plans. The house should be listed within a month. Summer buyers pay more. My stomach twisted. They weren't grieving. They were planning how to spend her life's work. My uncles nodded eagerly. My sister asked which rooms she could take furniture from before the sale. They were already dividing things that didn't belong to them, talking over one another like scavengers. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I knew something they didn't. The will reading was scheduled for Friday. They walked in like they were attending a victory parade. My father wore his best suit. My sister held a notebook, ready to write down her share. My uncles joked about who would get the backyard shed. But when the lawyer invited us into the conference room, there was a strange tension in the air, like he already knew what was about to happen. We took our seats. The lawyer cleared his throat. We will begin with a personal letter from Margaret, as she requested. My father smirked. Let's skip to the real part. The lawyer held up a hand. Her instructions were explicit. He unfolded a single sheet of paper, and the room fell silent. My dear family, he began reading in her calm, familiar voice. If you are hearing this, I am gone. I have watched each of you show the world one face and show me another. My father straightened. My sister blinked rapidly. My uncles stopped smiling. I saw how visits were performed for photographs, not for me. I saw how my comfort was measured against the value of my home. I saw how decisions were made to preserve inheritance instead of dignity. I could feel every heartbeat in the room. And I saw who sat with me, who fed me, who brushed my hair, who stayed when staying was inconvenient. I saw everything you hoped I wouldn't. Silence heavier than stone filled the room. Then came the words that changed everything. I choose to leave my estate not to those who sought its value, but to the one who saw my own. My father shot upright. What is this? But the lawyer continued. In accordance with my updated will, each of my children and grandchildren named here will receive $1 to symbolize what they valued me at in the end. My sister gasped. My uncles cursed under their breath. My father's face drained of color. And the remainder of my estate, my home, my savings, and the investment account associated with the recipe book shall go to my granddaughter. Everyone turned to me. The only person not shocked was the lawyer. My sister slammed her hands on the table. You have to split it. This is insane. My father's voice cracked. We took care of her. We earned that house. The lawyer calmly set down the letter. No. She made her intentions very clear. and her will is legally airtight. The room erupted. Accusations, screaming, threats disguised as family discussions. I just sat there, holding the recipe book in my lap. Grandma had given me everything, and they couldn't stand it. But the real chaos didn't begin until they realized what the recipe book truly contained, and what Grandma had hidden inside it for me alone. The real chaos didn't begin until they realized what the recipe book truly contained, and what Grandma had hidden inside it for me alone. By the time the lawyer finished reading her letter, the room felt as if every ounce of oxygen had been sucked out. My father was the first to break. "You are not walking out of here with everything. That house is family property," the lawyer responded without emotion. "It belonged to Margaret, and she chose the beneficiary. You cannot override her wishes." My sister pointed at me as if I had stolen something. "You manipulated her. You must have pressured her when she was sick." I didn't move. I didn't argue. There was no point. They had already rewritten the past in their minds, the same way they rewrote their version of being caring children. My uncles threatened lawsuits before the lawyer calmly reminded them that they had all signed the nursing home intake documents that clearly showed how little they spent on her care. Any challenge would expose them more than it would hurt me. One by one, their protests quieted, not because they accepted the truth, but because they realized they were trapped by it. After the reading, I drove straight to Grandma's house. The key, still warm in my palm, slid into the familiar lock. The door creaked the same way it always had. The lilac scent still clung faintly to the curtains. I stood at the threshold, overwhelmed by the weight of everything she had entrusted to me. This home wasn't a prize. It wasn't a trophy. It was a lifetime of her love, her work, her memories. I walked into the kitchen and placed the recipe book gently on the table, opening it to the page where I had found her letter. There, taped flat against the inside cover, was a small folded document I hadn't noticed before. It was a bank statement. My breath caught. The account had my name on it, and the balance, after years of slow deposits she must have made quietly and privately, was enough to support me for a long time. It wasn't millions, but it was life-changing. She had been planning this for years. She hadn't left me her estate out of impulse or anger. She had done it with intention, piece by piece. I pressed my hand against the page, tears sliding down my face before I realized I was crying. My phone buzzed, 20 messages, 2 missed calls, all from family. Then came the knock, not gentle, not patient. I opened the door to find my father, my sister, and one uncle standing on the porch, faces red with a mix of humiliation and desperation. My father forced a strained smile. "Let's be reasonable. We're family. Your grandmother didn't mean for this to tear us apart." My sister stepped forward. "You don't even make much money. You can't afford to maintain this house. It makes more sense to sell it and split the profit like adults." There it was, the truth beneath every word they had spoken since the beginning. They didn't want the house because it was hers. They wanted it because it was valuable. For a moment, I looked at their faces, searching for something human, something real. But all I saw was the same greed that had guided every decision they made about Grandma's life and death. "No," I said simply. My father's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake. You'll regret this." I shook my head. "The only mistake would be betraying Grandma's wishes." My sister scoffed. "So that's it. You're just cutting us off." I didn't raise my voice. "You cut yourselves off when you treated her like a burden." They stared at me, angry, offended, shocked that someone they always underestimated could deny them something they had convinced themselves they deserved. Finally, they left. Not quietly, not respectfully, but they left. And for the first time in months, the house felt peaceful again. I spent the next weeks cleaning, fixing small things, airing out rooms that hadn't been touched in years. I didn't sell the house. I restored it, and with every nail I hammered, every plant I trimmed, every floorboard I polished, I felt closer to her. She wasn't gone. Not here. Not in the place she built. Not in the recipes she wrote in her soft handwriting. Not in the life she quietly safeguarded for me. Standing in her kitchen one morning, sunlight warming the counters, I finally understood what she had given me. Not just a house, not just money, but the freedom to build a life shaped by love instead of greed. In the end, Grandma didn't punish anyone. She simply told the truth, and let the truth hand out the consequences. And I honored her by choosing peace over guilt, boundaries over manipulation, and dignity over the shallow affection my family offered only when it benefited them. I still visit her grave. I still talk to her. And every time I walk through the door of the house she left me, I whisper the same thing. I saw you, and you saw me. Thank you for everything.